We sat down for our first interview with Keegan in January at Torrey Pines, and his first thing out of his mouth was the most important thing, more than winning another major, is me making this Ryder Cup team. And the day that Zach was making his captain's picks, we had a crew down in Florida who had to get from Keegan's house to Ricky Fowler's house in 10 minutes. And we got to Keegan's house, and he knew that we were coming. His address was misprinted on the call sheet. And so our producer was at the wrong house. So I had to call Keegan on his cell phone and say, hey, buddy, like, what's your address? We just, I think we're just down the street. Well, we're coming in with the cameras. He said, doors unlocked, come on in. Cameras roll in. We set up. His phone rings, and, he gets his heart broken in real time. And it's a really visceral, real scene. I found out afterwards that getting that phone call, he assumed that meant we were coming because it was a yes. You couldn't watch that episode and then the follow-up episodes that continue to kind of tell Keegan's story as the Ryder Cup is played in Rome without him, without becoming a Keegan Bradley fan.
Well, I'm here with Chad Mumm, executive producer of Full Swing. Full Swing heading into its second season. Very exciting. And all our members of the Broken Tea Society, I know we're big fans of season one and our conversation about season one. So thanks so much for coming back on to talk about what we can expect in season two. First, I'd love to get your golf story, Chad, a little bit. I know you are a dedicated player and a very fine player. Tell us how you got into golf and the role that it plays in your life.
Well, Tom, first off, thanks for having me back. I love this conversation we had a year ago. It felt like it was just yesterday, but yeah. I'm happy to be back here. Love the Golfer's Journal, and super excited to be back. So listen, my golf story, I think, probably started out like a lot of your listeners here. I first started playing as a little kid. My dad got really into golf in the 90s. We were a military family. He was an Air Force pilot. So I moved around a lot as a kid. And, the joke about Air Force bases, when they build a new one, the runway goes in first, then they build the golf course, and then they put everything else up. So, golf and the Air Force have a long history together. So, my grandfather was also an Air Force pilot. He was an avid golfer his whole life. He did a stint with the RAF at Lucas Air Force Base, which is across the Firth of Fife. Is that the right where St. Andrews is? So they used to come and
Firth of Fife, Fife of Forth, whatever it takes.
Fife of Firth, yeah. This is a podcast where I can't get that wrong because I'll get called out for it. But anyway, so golf was was a part of my life. I remember that I started playing when I was 6 years old, and used to ride my bike to the golf course with a cart trolley kind of bungee corded to the back of my bike. And I still remember the first time I hit one right in the center. I was at a set of sawed off Slazenger irons, and I hit some 5-iron right in the center. And I've been chasing that dragon ever since, that feeling. And played pretty competitively as a junior. Got a wake up call at Georgia State high school golf championships when I played in the same field as Brian Harmon, and he was several years younger than me. And I think I played pretty well, shot around even par. I think he beat me by 10 shots. So it was pretty obvious that I wasn't going to do it for a living as a player. But, my first ever job actually was working as a stock boy at a pro golf discount in the suburb of Atlanta. I turned 16. I started working as a range picker and cart boy at a local course. And even during college at UGA, I was working at the driving range. So golf's always been on the mind. And the fact that I get to do this for a living now and bring this show to life it's kind of a pinch me moment. It's a dream come true.
That's awesome. It's fascinating. You mentioned that the debt that golf owes to military bases. And, that's where my dad picked up the game, was after Korea, being stationed in San Diego. And they had a lot of golf on the bases there for the Navy guys. And, and he would always say you could tell if the commander was a golfer by the condition of the golf courses, no matter where you went. So, it's there is a real debt to how many families or people or men and women have taken up golf around military bases. Sounds like a show, Chad. But not here to talk about that.
There's an idea. There's an idea in that.
You don't get pitch shows all day, every day, do you?
A little bit.
A little bit. Well, let's talk about this show. Let's talk about season one. I mean, I would say a big success. Did the reaction to season one surprise you? Was it what you expected?
I think when we talked last year, the show was coming out maybe a week later, and the impact was a lot bigger than I think my wildest dreams, to be honest. I mean, we knew we had made something special, and there was something really powerful in it, and obviously the golf world had leaned in, and we had a lot of real excitement for what we had filmed. But I think that what surprised me most was just how broad the audience was and how many kind of anecdotal stories I heard of someone's family members getting into the show who'd never cared about golf before, their spouse, whatever, their uncle, their aunt, people just falling in love with these stories and, caring in a way that they'd never cared before. I got so many like diehard golfers come to me and be like, yeah, my wife or sister or brother or husband, like they love golf now because of Full Swing. And that is, I think, a testament to the like power of Netflix and the sort of binge habits that people have. But the idea that we could take up, people's time and actually like get them to sit down and watch something for the 8, episodes of season 1 was just, it's still so amazing to me. And, and then we've been able to quantify some of the impact over the last year. I know the tour has looked at it, Netflix has looked at it, and it has had a pretty big impact on growing eyeballs for the tour. And, certainly golf is having its cultural moment. And I think our timing couldn't be better for season 2.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, when you're watching Netflix, it still pops up there, or maybe that's because it's in my interest zone, but there's a lot of stuff there I wouldn't be interested in, but it's certainly we all know non-golfers who watched it and asked golfers questions about, oh, what about that Joel Dahmen? That's been very, very exciting. What about reaction from the players who are in the show?
So the loudest voices, I think, actually were the hardcore golf media. I got a lot of chirping about explaining the cut in PGA Tour events, which I will tell you that we heard that feedback. So I don't think we even mentioned it once in season 2. So if you're worried about hearing about the cut, let me tell you now, officially, we don't get into that in season 2 because we can just throw you right into the action. So, look, I think I give a lot of credit to all the guys that said yes to season 1, completely sight unseen. They'd seen Drive to Survive probably, or kind of had some idea, but that still meant we were showing up with cameras in some of their most intimate moments and spending a whole year with them. And they'd never seen the show before. So credit to everybody who said yes to season 1 to lean in and actually let us do the thing. And they got to finally see it before it came out. And honestly, the feedback was universally positive. I think I only got one note from a player who was nitpicking the actual dollar amount that he took to go to live, where we had said some number and he was like, it wasn't that number, it was $5 million less. So we had to, go back and fact check that piece of it. But overall, like the players really felt like it was true to their experience, and that's what we had promised them. If you give us your time, then when you watch it, you're going to feel like this is an actual representation of what your life was like. And I think that was the best compliment we got, where players would say, you nailed it. That's what it felt like to be me. Yeah,
for sure. And what's $5 million when you're going to live? It's like,
yeah,
it's small math.
That's funny. Of all the stuff that we captured, that was the one thing where I got a player being like, absolutely not. You can't put that in because that's wrong. I was like, okay, that's fine. We'll change it. What was the number? So,
what was the reaction from, and when thinking back on the episodes, I think the Brooks episode was one that, surprised people just because it was sort of a, Brooks maybe looking a little more, say, vulnerable, or a side of him we hadn't seen. Do you know what his reaction was? Was he happy with that, comfortable with that, or surprised by it?
You'd have to ask Brooks. I can tell you that he declined to sit for an interview in season 2. So, I don't know. I don't know exactly. We tried. I thought his episode from season 1 was incredible look at an athlete being truly vulnerable and real in a way that you almost never see in any pro sport, let alone someone who's at the very top of the sport. And to me, I became a giant Brooks Koepka fan in the course of making that episode and creating the show, and remain a giant Brooks Koepka fan. And so obviously we wanted to go back and tell his comeback story. We were there filming him. We have a lot of access, not necessarily off the course, but a lot of access to all these tournaments. And when he won the PGA Championship, we thought, this is a great comeback story and we'd love to tell it. And, he decided he wasn't going to sit for an interview, and that's his prerogative. I think he's got his he's focused on winning majors these days. So we still get to pay off that story, and you'll see in the show. I think it was really important for us that we still gave him that hero comeback arc. I would have loved to have had it in his words, but
yeah, that's very interesting because I do think that episode made a lot of Brooks fans. But hey, Brooks, do your thing. Won't see you too much in season 2, I guess. There are a lot of exciting names featured in season 2 that I've been poking around and looking at and want to talk about. What's the reaction from the governing bodies? This is was a big step for getting access. So you've got to deal with. You've got USGA, PGA Tour, PGA because you did the Ryder Cup, I imagine. So I don't know how much you deal with the
certain
RNA.
golf club in Georgia. RNA
as well.
all
RNA. So all of them. So what's it like? What was their reaction, and what is it like dealing with the governing bodies?
They've been great. They had, I think that in many ways, the sort of disruption to the golf calendar that happened during COVID is part of the reason why this show is even possible. Because if you're inside, this can get very insidery, by the way. So stop me if I'm getting like too weedsy.
No, let's go. Let's get in the weeds.
Politics of pro golf. But like the governing bodies historically have not really collaborated all that often. I think they all occupy their different space, and they sort of, as far as I understand, they'd never collaborated on a singular content initiative before. I mean, they work with each other on scheduling, and they deal with issues together. They're on the governing body of the official world golf rankings, things like that, but they're not like, they don't collaborate on stuff. And Full Swing was the first time they'd ever really all committed the rights and access required to make something like this to one project that they didn't control. And that was a huge step. And part of my understanding is because during COVID, they had to remake the entire golf schedule, and they all kind of got around a table, or a virtual table, sort of for the first time. Now, obviously you can fact check whether that's true or not, but like that seems to be a breaking and sort of a détente in terms of their willingness to collaborate together. And that was the fertile ground with which we pitched coming in and doing Full Swing. And, look, some of them were easier to talk into it than others. I think once Augusta had said yes, it kind of, the dominoes fell with everybody else. And, for the most part, once they agreed to be in the show, they were awesome. They gave us real access. They all have slightly different rules of the road, and we want to be extremely respectful. I think the thing that sold the Augusta in particular, which was the first one to say yes, and it was the one we were focused on kind of most because we felt like we could get the Masters on board, is the way that I pitched it to him was like, we're not trying to tell the story of the Masters or Augusta National. You guys do that really well, and the broadcast does it really well. You obviously have an incredible media operation. You do it really well. Our show is set like in the present tense. And what we want to tell is the story of what it's like to compete in the Masters in 2023 or in 2024. We don't have to do the whole history of the club. We don't have to tell all this. You guys do that real well. Let us just come in and show audiences what it's like to be a competitor. What's it like to be a family member of a competitor competing at the Masters? In the tournaments, these majors become this sort of venue for these stories, but it's still the human stories. It's not the story of the tournament. And I think they appreciated that. And that was our attitude always, which was, we're their guests. We're always, it doesn't matter which tournament we're at, but we're there as guests. And our job is more to tell the story of the player and their emotional journey through these events, the highs and lows of it, as more that than it is to tell the story of those tournaments. So, this year we added a new partner in the DP World Tour. So, we had to tell the Ryder Cup Europe story. So we started working closely with the DP World Tour. It took another year after we got the majors on board to kind of talk the Ryder Cup management folks into having the Ryder Cup be part of Full Swing. I think rightly so. They appreciate just how big of a deal the Ryder Cup is. And so, it took a little while to kind of convince them that it should live within Full Swing. But once they said yes, they were all in. And it was really important for Europe in particular to have the portrayal be even. I think they were really worried that it was going to become an all America story, and they just wanted their captain and their players to have a platform as well. And so we sort of committed to them, and they committed to each other that if Zach did something, Luke would do something, and vice versa. And so that actually created a really nice, healthy, they were pushing each other to give us more access, which was really great. And, and we got amazing access. The Ryder Cup was such a gift for us as storytellers, because it was stakes that built for an entire season and actually had an end point where we knew that, 12 guys were going to be celebrating and 12 guys were going to be crushed. And, so much of making the show is going and following 12 or 15 guys at a major or at a PGA Tour event and hoping someone wins. The worst thing that can happen is like a T13. That's hard to make a story about a tie for 15th place. But when you get every player either winning or losing, it creates real stakes. And then there were also moments leading up to the Ryder Cup, like captain's picks, where we knew it was a year of drama building to one phone call, and we knew when the phone calls were happening and we knew where they were going to be. So we had cameras there. And I think just seeing that in person or seeing that in the show and that verite of the real-time reactions, that's real. That's as real as it gets. And it's an amazing gift to the show to have something that doesn't actually rely on an individual's performance in a golf tournament to really be the payoff that we need to tell a complete story. The Ryder Cup gave us that arc, that you'll see sort of signposted throughout the show.
That's exciting. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that when you think about it, really doing the show during a Ryder Cup year, it just gives you, it gives you a third act, a great close there. With all these folks that you've been following, and that's, I don't want to do any spoilers, but I noticed that Keegan Bradley is featured this season. So tune in for that. Good God, Keegan is just such an amazing character and was just so amazingly professional with us. He actually approached me before season 1 and said, I've watched every single episode of Drive to Survive. I watch Hard Knocks. I know these kinds of shows. I want to be a part of it. And we had already had our cast committed for season 1. So I said, let's talk next year. And he had played pretty well at the end of the season prior to this year and had won in Japan, sort of one of those crossover events. And so got on, we decided, let's try to tell the story of you making the Ryder Cup team. We sat down for our first interview with Keegan in January at Torrey Pines, and his first thing out of his mouth was, the most important thing, more than winning another major, is me making this Ryder Cup team. It's all I care about. I want to get back there. And, that story from that moment on was, what can I do to put myself in a position where I qualify automatically, where I don't have to be a captain's pick? And then when it becomes clear he's going to have to be a captain's pick, how do I set myself up to make it unassailable that I'm that choice? And we filmed with him. He had said, yes or no, I want the cameras there all year. It doesn't matter if I make a team or not, I want the cameras there. And the day that Zach was making his captain's picks, we had a crew. We had 4 crews, I think, in like 3 different states or 4 different states and 3 different time zones. I mean, it was a wild logistical puzzle to put together. But Zach was making the phone calls from Frisco at the PGA of America headquarters. And we had a crew down in Florida who had to get from Keegan's house to Ricky Fowler's house in 10 minutes. So Zach could make the call, and he wasn't going to wait for us. It was sort of like, hold on for a second. We got to get across town to get to Ricky's house, but he was not going to wait around. And we got to Keegan's house, and he knew that we were coming, but we hadn't shown up. And that come to find out, I get a frantic phone call that his address was misprinted on the call sheet. And so our producer was at the wrong house. So I had to call Keegan on his cell phone and say, hey buddy, like, what's your address? We just, I think we're just down the street. He gives me his correct address. And I said, all right, well, we're coming in with the cameras. He said, doors unlocked, come on in. I found out afterwards that getting that phone call, he assumed that meant we were coming because it was a yes. So he got his hopes up, and the cameras roll in, we set up, his phone rings, and he gets his heart broken in real time, and it's really visceral, real scene. And then unfortunately we had to get up and leave and get to Ricky's house in the next 10 minutes. So and he handled it like a true pro. I think you couldn't watch that episode and then the follow-up episodes that continue to kind of tell Keegan's story as the Ryder Cup is played in Rome without him, without becoming a Keegan Bradley fan. Wow, I cannot wait. That's like you said, I mean, the Ryder Cup gives you these storylines that, there aren't that many moments in golf where, where someone's sitting there like a draft pick, where you have that sort of drama. That's I can't wait. I can't wait to see that. So a lot of exciting stuff in season 2. Going into season 2. So once you've had success with a show in season 1, do you feel the need to change something or add something or do something different? I mean, this happens with anything that anyone does in life, or it happens at the Golfers Journal or whatever. You do something, okay, people like that. what do I do next? What's the follow up? So what was your approach going into season 2 of, do we need to change things or should we stick to the formula?
I think we had this attitude that most important, we didn't want to have a sophomore slump. These shows, right. Yes, we had a lot of success with these season 1. It reached a very broad, wide audience and was hugely successful by kind of all metrics that matter. And we just wanted to make sure that season 2 was better than season 1 because, who knows? We could be a one-off hit. Like, it could work once, it could never work again. I don't know. So we went into the season with, there's no guarantees. We went into the season saying, like, no sophomore slump. This is going to be the best episode of the season of this show we've ever made, and we're giving it everything we got. And I think the other piece of that was we really did listen and learn. I mean, making a show like this, these are hard shows to make. You shoot 900 something hours, you edit it down to 6 hours. You got to make real commitments to stories. You got to make choices about who you're following. So we don't have enough time to edit it, and just to shoot everything and then edit it for 6 months. We got to start editing concurrently as we're filming it in order to finish it. I mean, each episode takes between 15 to 20 weeks to edit. I mean, these are not short projects. So, and there's 8 episodes and 35, 40 people on that post team, like, figuring it out. And at some point we got to make a commitment to these stories, and we got to kind of hope that they pay off. So you make some bets, and we're just sitting around watching the results like everybody else, like with our cameras obviously rolling, but hoping that this bet we made on this story is actually going to pay off the way that we want it to pay off. And we've bet well, and it's done so. And I think for me personally, I heard a lot of the feedback from real golf, hardcore golf fans about, like, the cut and some of that and how the stories were told. And we all really wanted season 2 to be really propulsive and narrative. And we really wanted it to pull you in and feel like more of a drama, where there were episodes that had cliffhangers, and not everything was wrapped up in a neat bow after every episode. And you'll see, we released this teaser trailer 2 weeks ago that has all the episode titles, and there's two-part episodes in season 2, which is a lot. And those episodes have hard cliffhangers, and the players who are featured in the show, what's nice about making it again for the second season, we brought back a bunch of players from season 1, but we've also added a few new players. And even the players that aren't heavily featured from season 1, they still appear. Tony Finau isn't profiled in season 2 the way he was in season 1, but he pops up all the time, and it makes it really easy to introduce a new character like Tom Kim, for example, when you see Tom Kim interacting with this beloved character from season 1, and all of a sudden you see Tony's validation, and that validates Tom Kim. And so even players that don't get the full POV treatment for season 2, they help set the stage for the story. And we really wanted to feel like you're landing right in the universe the second you left it. So you could watch season 1 again and go right into episode 1 of season 2 from episode 8 of season 1, and just feel like you haven't missed a beat. Like, the season starts with Rory, number 1 in the world, FedEx Cup champion, ready to take on the world. This is his year. And then you watch that, unfold probably not at all as he was expecting, missing the cut at Augusta, not getting it done, watching his rival, win the 5th major, sort of beat him to 5. And then June 6th happens. And that's the cliffhanger for episode 1. And all of a sudden you're sucked in, and you want to stick around to see how this all unfolds.
Wow. Yeah. A lot happened this year now that I'm recalling it, listening to you. Was there a piece of advice or criticism from season 1 that was the most valuable that you took into? I mean, you mentioned some things, they're talking about the cut, etc. But was there something where you thought, okay, that's very useful and insightful, and that'll sort of influence us going forward?
I think it was less piece of advice. It was more, we saw what worked well, and some of the stories to make a successful full swing episode, or even any of these kinds of shows, you really need stories to have sort of a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I think a lot of our episodes from season 1 had beginning, middles, and ends within the episodes. And I think what we've been able to do for season 2 is draw that drama out across the arc of the season. And I think it just makes it more compelling and propulsive, and it pulls you through. And the stakes were really high. And people forget, during season 1, the live defections that happened were very much speculated upon. It wasn't a shock that, Bryson Sambo left. It wasn't a shock. I mean, people have been murmuring about Cam Smith after the Open at St. Andrews for weeks. And so, there wasn't a lot of surprise. There was still anxiety. And obviously there was this like formation of these two sides and this war in factions about what's the future of pro golf look like, but it wasn't a shock. June 6th was an absolute shock. It was as shocking to the PGA Tour players as it was, I assume, to the live players and kind of everybody in golf. And to have a moment in the early part of our season, and for us, June 6th is still pretty early in the run of the show in terms of the story arcs and how we're filming, to have it an event that affects everybody equally, that actually nobody has answers to, and nobody can sit and look into the camera and say, like, I know what's going on, because nobody did. It's a kind of a gift for producers and for storytelling, because it levels up the drama beyond the golf course and pays off kind of everything you've been seeing off the course and everything that people have been working towards, and just gives all this new pressure to like what's going to happen. And you want any good story, from the time of people telling stories around fireplaces, fires in the old times, whatever, it's like you want people leaning forward. You want to say, I want to hear what's next, because I don't know what's going to happen. And we got really early on a bomb drop like that makes you want to lean in and say, what's going to happen to all these people that I've now come to really care about?
Chad, I'm still leaning in. What the hell is going to happen from June 6th?
Oh, God, I wish I knew.
Right? So plenty to talk about, a story arc continuing. So if folks don't know what we're referring to, so June 6th, the announcement of some sort of merger between LIV and PGA Tour, or PGA Tour sort of taking over LIV or swallowing up LIV. Who knows what it actually, I mean, we know it was said, but who knows what we still don't know what that is going to look like. But you were there to get the reaction. So how much does LIV feature in season 2? Did you go to LIV events, or, there's some LIV players listed here that I know we see Dustin's picture or image in the previews, etc. How much does LIV figure into season 2?
Yeah, you can't talk about pro golf without talking about LIV. It's a fact of life now in professional golf, and so I think LIV features as heavily and as often and as really as it did in season 1. For us, the plan going into the season was actually to try to let that story settle for a minute, because it just felt like, okay, well, they're going to have a season, the tour's going to have a season, and the majors are where everyone's going to come together, and then we have the Ryder Cup. So we kind of set up the Ryder Cup beginning of our filming as this macro story that everything could potentially build to, which is awesome about the Ryder Cup. And the sort of PIF announcement, the framework agreement, as it's referred to, not a merger, I've been told, it's just something that just threw the beginning of the season into chaos, and obviously had a massive emotional reaction from a lot of people that just made for really good, just stakes raising for our cast. For us, it was important to continue to tell the story of some of the players from season 1. So Dustin was a natural fit for that. We had him in season 1. He was excited about season 2, and we wanted to continue to sort of follow his story arc as he, maintains and continues to be very kind of comfortable in his own skin in a way that only Dustin Johnson can be, and ends up featuring very heavily in the second episode that kind of centers around the U.S. Open. So, I'm excited for people to see that. And obviously there's great stories that are kind of all across pro golf. But, for us, it was important to make sure that we kind of kept going with some of those players, and they're heavily featured across the season. I don't think anybody would ever say there's not any LIV in the show or we glossed it over. That's not the case. You just have to trust me and watch it.
So tell us who is featured. You've mentioned some names already, but any new exciting faces coming to season 2 full swing?
So, kind of in order, Rory McIlroy heavily featured in the first episode. And I think, Rory is unabashedly a superstar, and not in a similar way to Brooks, but we got to see Rory at his highest and his lowest across the year. And I think the way he handles himself, it doesn't matter if you're a fan of his or not. I think you're going to learn something new about Rory McIlroy. And I would hope you come away just with even more respect for him as a person, not just as a competitor, because I think he just was put in a very difficult situation, and how he navigated it is a fascinating thing to see in real time. And then obviously gets to go on to be hero of Ryder Cup Europe. So that's kind of the centerpiece story for episode 1. We've got Ricky Fowler, who is heavily featured in the season. And Ricky is a player that we followed actually all year for the first season, and felt like his story didn't have an ending. And for a show like this, it's not really enough to have access to a superstar. You really need a beginning, a middle, and an end. And his story had a beginning and a middle, but it didn't have an end. And so we told his team that we actually were going to sit on it and hope, and we knew he was going to win. We felt like he was on his way back. So we just said, if you trust us and let us keep going, we know he's going to get his payoff, and that'll make it worth it. And sure enough, he gets into the final group at the US Open at LA Country Club and then goes on to win in Detroit. And instead of it being a 6-month story, it becomes a 2-year story, and just the amount of emotional depth you can go into, and you have that much access and that much context, and you saw the pressure he put on himself and that his family was feeling just in support of him is just, it's awesome. And so, Ricky's a new cast member, Joel Damon and Wyndham Clark, incredible duo that maybe you wouldn't expect to find together. And that's one where I'll just say you should watch that episode, because it's incredibly powerful and one that I think I'm most proud of any of the episodes we've ever made. And that's kind of all I'll say about that one. And then, players like Tom Kim, players like Alex Fitzpatrick, Matt's brother. I mean, Matt heavily features again. Their interesting relationship is between a brother and two brothers, one that's a superstar and the other that's trying to come out from his older brother's shadow. Guys like Keegan and Justin Thomas and their fight to make that Ryder Cup team. And then obviously we get to Rome, and you get to see inside the offices of Luke and Zach, 2 captains, and their differing approach to leadership, and how it all played out in Rome, and the kind of cast of characters that form the heart and soul of those 2 teams. So it's a different, it's I think everything that people liked from season 1, I think, is back. The access is really real. The human stories are real. You'll laugh and hopefully tear up a little bit, but just the stakes and the propulsion and the cinematic nature of what we were able to get this year, given the fact that we had already done it once and the players have sort of really invited us in, it is really special. And our team is so proud of what we were able to put on the screen.
Can't wait to see it. How about, it's tough to say, but are there got to have some favorites, some players who, I don't know, you're more in touch with or have become friends through this. As a golfer, that's got to be the best part of doing this, that you're like hanging out with the best players in the world, right?
Yeah, it's awesome for sure. Listen, they've all been great, honestly, to work with, and I don't want to cop out of that answer, because I'll say that guys like Joel Damon. Well, then
tell us who really sucks. No, just kidding.
There's who really sucks. I don't think there's not that many that really suck. They're honestly the people that we film with, they get it. Joel Damon is somebody that I think our entire team will be crying when he gets his next PGA Tour win. I think there's nobody in the world that we root for more as a team, and our producers have gotten really close with his family and with Gino, and like just that duo and how much trust they put in us and how much they leaned in. And there's real like friendship there. And I think when he gets back in the winner's circle, our team's going to be rooting for him. But everybody has been great. I love Matt Fitzpatrick. He's just like the greatest guy, and so funny and like sneakily witty and just the best. And, DJ, there's just nobody cooler in the world with more just natural swagger than Dustin Johnson. Just love DJ. Rory, I've always been a fan of Rory's, and now I've just become almost in awe of him as a competitor, but even more as like a person, as a professional, as a thoughtful leader. And, leadership is tough. Leadership can be extremely lonely, and golf's a sport that prides itself on individualism and doesn't take to individual leadership in a way that other team sports do. And Rory demonstrates like real leadership qualities that I think is something that we could all aspire to, and everybody else is great. Ricky's great. Tom Kim's hilarious. He's just like the greatest, most honest, like just incredible budding superstar that has been fun to hang out with. And you get, guys like Justin Rose, who, is just like hilarious and awesome, and you're rooting for him. And you see him make a putt to draw a match of the Ryder Cup, and it feels like he just won the Masters. It's just so much drama when you're in a Ryder Cup like that. So it's hard to pick. It really is hard to play favorites, honestly. And there's not a lot of assholes out there, honestly. There's, we have our good times and our bad, and sometimes we're there with the cameras when they're not in a good mood, and and they just know we'll be back again the next day, so they might as well let us film it.
Yeah, there you go. Take us behind the scenes a little bit. This season, given the success of season one, does it mean you have more resources, more crews, more to coordinate? From your perspective, how is this thing made?
So it's we don't necessarily need more resources. I mean, the benefit of making a show for Netflix is it's very well resourced. We have an amazing team. I think it helps that our field crews had been out there for a year. They had relationships. We didn't have to reintroduce ourselves. There was a lot of general comfort with us being in the locker room and in these private spaces that historically cameras weren't allowed in. All of a sudden, we're just there again, and everybody's like, all right, well, this is how it's going to be now. So they've sort of accepted us into that world. For us, it's really about, again, making these editorial choices about who to follow and what stories to tell. And we rely on, not, it's not just me, it's a team effort. We have an amazing team. I work with the producers at Box to Box. They're our production partner on this. They do shows like Drive to Survive, Breakpoint, a bunch of other projects, and they're incredibly talented filmmakers, from the UK. I think that actually was very helpful for us in our Ryder Cup, storytelling, because we had basically half the team was in the US, half the team was in London. And there was a lot of like arguing, and almost we created a little rivalry between the producing teams. When we got to Rome, we're like, you guys are going to be in Europe outfits. We're going to be in USA outfits. We want, like, it's a competition. Who gets the best footage? Like Team USA, like, go get the better footage than Europe. Like, they're talking shit. You guys beat them, And so we created a little almost like filming Ryder Cup that turned out great. And like, even in the edit, I think it kept that story very balanced, because I can't tell you how many times we pop into an edit and like the producers from Europe are like, trying to make it look like the US won this thing. Like, they didn't, So we're like, yeah, you're right. So how do we balance the two sides of the stories? But, it's just, again, we wanted season 2 to be more dramatic. We wanted to be more narrative. We wanted to be able to tell these cliffhanging episodes, and we wanted to bring you deeper into this world. We felt like we opened the doors, we opened the curtain a little bit. We wanted to open it even more for season 2. And we felt like we had the access to do that. And then it was just a matter of like making smart choices about the stories that we told, making sure that we had a beginning, a middle, and end for each of these characters. And then, being able to be there in the right, you have to have a mix of luck and good planning to be there when you need to be there and to capture the moments. And some of the most compelling stuff of the season, we just happened to have cameras there on a dramatic day or in a dramatic moment, and we caught it, and there was a lot of luck involved. And then other times, we knew what was going to happen before it happened, and we got our cameras there for captain's picks and things like that. So, it's a mix of all of it. And these shows never get easier, but certainly the access we had coming out of season 1 really helped us, I think, make season 2 bigger and better.
Can we look ahead? Can we talk about, they're playing golf again, and big tournaments right around the corner. Is there a season 3?
Nothing official. Netflix doesn't ever announce renewals or do real renewals until after a show premieres. So, look, golf's happening. Last year, we kept filming even before season 1 premiered, and Netflix didn't announce the season 2 pickup until I think a week after it premiered. I don't think it's any secret that our cameras are out filming, but we've not been officially picked up for season 3. And I would hope that we get a chance to run it back again. And honestly, again and again and again, because I don't think that, all of this drama that is professional golf is necessarily going to be resolved, overnight. And I think that we've introduced a much broader audience to these athletes and into their universe. And I think it's a place where it's fun to spend time in. And I think it's just as fun for us. I hope it's just as much fun for the audience to kind of embed themselves in a world that is professional golf and the ups and downs and the challenges of it, and the glamour and the heartache and everything in between. I think it's a world that I love living in, and I hope our audience does too.
We all do, and you've done a great job of bringing it to us, Chad. Is there, as someone telling stories in golf, is there an interest in looking at things beyond pro golf? Because one wonders, and we think about this all the time. What is golf? And professional golf is a very small slice of what actually larger golf is. It is full of drama and storylines and personalities and superstars, which from a storytelling point of view is fantastic. But do you ever wonder about how far that can go, and where are other golf stories or the next golf stories?
Yeah, I think that golf is an incredible cultural force in a way that it hasn't been since maybe like the 50s and 60s. I think golf is having a moment of real pop culture relevance. And a lot of that's taking place completely outside of the pro game. And there are 100 or whatever, there's 45 million golfers in the United States of America. There's a lot more all over the world. More people are playing golf now than they have ever taken up the game. That group is younger and more diverse and more male female split than ever before. I think there's massive opportunity for storytelling in golf. I think that, there's no other sport where you can go and play on the same, field as the professionals do and actually be able to compare yourselves to them. And, sure, a lot of these golf courses are private or inaccessible, but you can get out there and there are public courses that host events that you can go and see how you stack up, and you can play the same equipment. You can play on the same, ballparks. Basically, it's really special. It's also the one sport that brings people together in a way that, as as fans of golf, like you sit around after a round at a bar, sitting in the clubhouse somewhere, and you've got people from all walks of life, and all they want to do is talk about the best shots they hit that day, or they're paying off their bets and they're living in the moment. I've seen so many rooms in golf, whether it's in private clubs or in munis or at driving ranges, where you've just got a group of people who would never be in the same room together if it wasn't for this great game of ours. And, I hope that some of the pure joy of that comes across in the show with these professionals, because guess what? They do that too. There's a lot of scenes in this season too, where guys come off of a major in the final round, they're sitting around the locker room and they're just like reliving their shots just like we would, and they'll, "Oh, did you see it? That one broke on me." It's like, "Oh yeah, I saw it. I missed that one too," that kind of stuff. And, they're just like us in many ways. And then golf in general, I think, just has a lot to give and a lot more to give from a storytelling perspective. You guys do it really, really well. And I have so much respect for the Golfers Journal and how you do your storytelling. And I think that, I'd love to do a lot more in golf. I'd love to do more in kind of every capacity. I think there's way more stories to tell than just the stories of these professionals.
You should come film an editorial meeting at the Golfers Journal if you want some drama and some action.
Some riveting drama. Brendan
good
pounding his fist on the table,
Both fists. He pounds both fists.
Yeah.
No, we love what you're doing. And I think you're right. The moments from season one, those they're just like us moments, were the coolest thing to me. When you see Rory and Rahm sit down for breakfast or whatever, you're like, really? It's just very, very cool. And like you said, golf, it gives you the things as a storyteller that you need. Those characters you're talking about. It gives you literally a beginning, a middle, and end, a first tee and a final hole, and all those things. So it is this great. It gives you the fundamentals, the things that you need to tell a story. So you've been doing it incredibly well with Full Swing, and I'm excited to hear that some of those arcs are going to be sort of drawn out because season one, they were sort of, here's the story. It's sort of, we get to act 3 at the end. And there was, but have storylines sort of drawn through the whole season. That's super exciting. I think people are going to get very excited about that.
Well, I hope so. And, it's coming out in 8 days. So I hope everybody checks it out. Whether you liked season 1 or not, I really think there's something for everybody in this season. I think that if you're a hardcore fan of professional golf, you're going to see stuff that you never thought you'd see. There's storylines that are going to come to light in this show that never got picked up by the press with big name players. And I think, that will drive a whole bunch of conversation. And then just the pure heartache that is golf, where there's no more individual sport, truly. After all the talk of money and where people play and what they play for, it's still, you got to go out there and you got to hit the shots. And it's ultimately quantifiable. And, when the pressure's on, it's one person who has to take that club back. And, the fact that that's in some ways somehow relatable to everybody else who just wants to play the game and who looks forward to their weekend tee time all week when they're sitting in their office. I think that I hope the joy of the game comes through in the show. It's important to me that it does. And also, like, this is meant for fans. This show it's like, it doesn't have a politics of pro golf. It's like, it's about what happened. And I hope that everybody watches it and sees, a true reflection of the kind of wild year that was last year. And I hope it gets people talking about stuff that's more fun to talk about than, how much guys are getting paid. Thank
you, Chad. Thanks for what you're doing for golf. Thanks for the eyes you're bringing to golf. And thank you so much for your time. Great. Really enjoyed it.
It's always a pleasure, Tom. Hopefully we can run this back again next year.
I really hope so. Thanks for listening, everyone. And if you enjoyed this episode, we strongly encourage you to become a member of the Golfer's Journal, or if you already are, to share it with your friends. As a reader-supported publication, we couldn't do it without you. We also couldn't do it without the help of our partners, and they are Titleist, Scotty Cameron, FootJoy, Linksole, Omega, Charles Schwab, and BMW. We'll see you next time on the Golfer's Journal podcast.